upcoming presentation. The topic is CEO and executive branding in the new marketing. An interesting topic coming up with our interesting panelists as well. All right, so let's introduce our first panelist, Saana Azzam. She is also known as the Chief Inspirational Officer for Business Globally, and she is an international award economist, Forbes contributor, a CEO of the Middle East leading speakers bureau, MENA Speakers. And in addition to providing keynotes to conferences and events around the world, Azzam has become region's #1 expert on public speaking. Her success is grounded in helping businesses in the Middle East select the right speakers for the events from the talent around the region. And MENA Speakers clients trust the company's recommendations because of her insightful analysis and her training as an economist and strategic thinker. Born to a Palestinian refugee, Azzam has pushed herself to beyond her humble beginnings. She's graduated from the esteemed Stockholm School of Economics with Masters in Economics. She earned prestigious title of Female Economist of the Year in 2010. Through Howard University's extension courses in Boston, she focused her studies on leadership communication. Recently, MENA Speakers launched a new tech platform that is www.experts.market, a marketplace for speakers to be booked for events, sell their books, online courses, advisory, and market themselves. So let's welcome Saana Azzam with a round of applause. I think I have to sign up with MENA Speakers. All right, so let's welcome our next panelist on the stage, Raul Davis. Raul Davis is the CEO of the Ascendant Group, an award-winning global leader in CEO branding firm, ranked as one of the top PR agencies worldwide on AdWorld Masters top agencies list, as well as ranked #1 in Mindtree minority-owned PR firm in the United States, and one of the PR News Top's 100 ranked elite agencies. Ascendant offers one of the most integrated agencies models in the world, including brand strategies, PR, literally represent design, social media, video, photography, and strategic relationships. Client includes Fortune 500 executives, venture capitalists, high-performing entrepreneur brands, and best-selling self-help authors looking for amplifying their research. In recent years, the company has been active in Web3, healthcare, and real estate industries. Davis regularly writes content for Forbes, an entrepreneur, and has been invited to small business summits at the White House, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, in U.S. Senate. He is an author himself and is an innovator, initiator, and can inspire you to ignite your own life. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Big round of applause for him.
We have an excellent panel once again. So I think it's going to be, the stage is going to be yours. Yes?
All right. Okay.
Yeah, you have the questions on you?
I am so ready. No problem
Perfect.
at all. How are you all feeling? Is that a good or a good? Is it a good or a great? Okay, good. Well, we're excited to be initiating a really great conversation with somebody who's flown in all the way from the US to join us today. So I feel like we should feel very honored. Thank you, Raul. You're a busy man. Thank you for making yourself available to us. And you do work with some of the most interesting brands in the world, and you do create some of the coolest campaigns and personal brands out there. You're the mastermind behind the scenes. You've been described as a savant, and having worked with you, that's truly the case. But I want to get to know more about kind of your story, the man behind all of this. What got you into the field of CEO branding?
Well, first, I just want to thank the organizers for having us, and thank you, Saana, for spending your time with us today. So I did not wake up one day and decide I wanted to go into CEO branding, right? It was a journey, you know. And so when I was in undergrad, I had the opportunity to book a popular speaker on campus, a hip-hop artist, KRS-One, any of you know him. And we had about 1,100 students on campus for this event. So I said to the Speakers Bureau we were working with, do you guys have any internships? I love what you do. They said no. I said, well, can you give me one anyway? So I started booking speakers for them across the country, did it for a couple years, got phenomenal at it. And by the time I was in grad school, I had 2 of the clients approach me and say, hey, we love working with you. Why don't you start your own company? We'll become your first 2 clients. So Ascendant originally started as a speaker management company. Didn't take long to figure out what determines how much someone speaks. You know this, their popularity or their brand, right? So we started looking at PR and securing book deals as ways to simply increase their speaking engagements. Over the next couple of years, we realized that I started having more clients who became CEOs and executives. And looking at the marketplace, because I think innovation's always important, right? Like you can't always just assume what you did yesterday will work tomorrow. You always got to think about what's next. So we took a look at the marketplace and realized nobody was basically doing CEO branding. There was one company. This was back in 2009. So we decided to be the second market entry at the time. So that's how we got into it, and that's where we've been the last 14 years.
Amazing. And so the roadmap for a personal brand, whether you're a CEO, a speaker, an executive, would you say the characteristics of personal branding are the same across the board? And what are kind of some of those elements to factor in?
Well, there's a couple things that impacts everyone. We all have a decision to make. Either you get branded or you get labeled, right? And so if you and I had come up here in our pajamas, we could ask people not to judge us, but it would be too late. It already happened.
Stay with me. Let's repeat that, because that was like an Oprah moment, like, oh my God, okay. So either you get branded or you get labeled.
Yes.
We're writing that down. All right, fantastic.
So the decision for you is, how will you shape it, right? Like, are you going to design your brand, or are you just going to let it happen to you? And there's just this kind of simple example I like to talk about with it. Back in 2016, if any of you were following the U.S. elections, you remember Jeb Bush was the favorite for a Republican nomination. Donald Trump came in and called him low energy, and it instantly tanked his campaign. Why could such a simple thing tank his campaign? Because he didn't brand himself in advance enough to take that hit, and he didn't know how to brand his way out of it. So the stakes for branding can be really significant. At the end of the day, how people see you will determine how much business you get, how much success you will have. So those are the stakes. One of the things that successful people know across any industry is that business is not just B2B or B2C, but it's H to H, human to human, developing an emotional connection, right? So if you think about it, corporate brands have been around, 130, 150 years? But human interaction, what we're doing right now, 10,000 years or so, right? So we make our decisions based on how much we trust people. And I think that ends up being the foundational element of any brand strategy across any executive, speaker, et cetera, is understanding that as a baseline for success. Now, I'll just ask the question back to you. You work with some of the best speakers in the world. I mean, here in the region, you're the leading bureau. So, like, what have you seen with the best speakers?
Yeah, so some of the work that we've done, it's either taking somebody from, let's say, $5,000 speaking fee up to 10, 15, 20, or taking somebody that's been speaking for free their whole career to taking them to get charged. The roadmap is really pretty much the same. First, you make sure that you have your story and your narrative in place, who you are and what you talk about, just that essence in place. And then you move into, well, obviously your speaking skills have to be there. So I'm just going to assume it's there. And then it's really a PR and branding game. So you need to be hitting that drum of, I'm out there, I'm an expert in my field. Associating yourself with those best in class, thought leadership pieces, really being the person that people go to for their opinion when it comes to their specific topic that they're working on. And we see that as a core for people accelerating their careers. But I want to get tactical with you since I have you here with me.
Absolutely.
So I think everyone here is on board as marketers that, yes, personal brand is hugely important. Can you break it down into some tactics, components, strategies of what can be done, how it's done?
Yeah, so let's talk about the components of what makes a CEO or an executive brand, right? So you said the first part, which is really kind of thinking about your messaging. It's very important to think about how people will see you within the first 10 seconds that they come across you in person, or in terms of looking at your resume, your bio, etc. Your Google results are huge, right? Like when someone Googles your name, what's the first 10 things I see about you? It's going to influence you. So you have to decide that you're going to architect that a little bit more as opposed to letting it happen to you. Now, how do you do that? Number one, I think public relations is very important. And by public relations, like, yes, you absolutely can buy some media, that's fine, but when we think about public relations, we think about it more in terms of organically earning the media. So demonstrating that you are a thought leader. Because, like, for the media these days, they know you're trying to promote your company, and if you make it too obvious, we're gonna send you to the advertising department, right? So if you want to get earned media, you need to demonstrate something that provides value to them. You have to think of yourself as a service provider to the media. They care about two things. Number one, what's going to get them more clicks, right? And then number two, how are they helping their audience receive information? So if you're an AI, for instance, you can talk about 5 trends for 2023 that will shape AI, for instance, right? You got those 5 points. Now you're creating some value for them, and that's what you go out with. Social media kind of ends up being the next important component, right? So with social, don't try to do every single platform and be great at it, because you're not, all right? Pick your battles. So it might be LinkedIn and Instagram for you, right? Be great at LinkedIn and Instagram as opposed to mediocre across 6 different platforms. The next thing is speaking, which you've talked about. If you can get in front of a room of people within your industry, have 45 minutes of their time, you should get business out of that, right? So getting speaking opportunities and positioning yourself as a speaker. And one of the more underrated components I think people miss is the visual aspect. Get a professional photo shoot, not your iPhone. All right, the iPhone's cool. I know they come out with a new one every couple months now at this point, and they charge you $1,800 for it. But getting a professional photography says that you take your brand seriously. And if you don't take your brand seriously, why should I, right? So the signals you're sending, and when you think about like web design and media kits and social and all these sort of things, the quality of your photography helps you perform very well there. And then the last thing a lot of our clients look at is a publishing side, right? So having a book can be very helpful to your career because it allows you to have people spend 200 pages with you, right? How's that for brand exposure?
Yes, you're right. And even on our side, I mean, on average, I get solicited about 5 to 10 times of speakers, whether they're celebrities or non-celebrities, saying, hey, can you represent me and work with me? And it's quite surprising the number of times I have these experts in their field sending me these low quality type of photos. And I'm going, well, if you're not investing in your brand, why should another company book for your time and expertise? You're not sending those signals that my brand and my packaging is solid. I know what I'm doing. And so it has them questioning that type of credibility. So normally those deals don't happen. So of course, invest in your personal brand in the way that you show up. But then there's quite often this objection to the CEO branding saying, you know, I'm the CEO, I'm the executive. I don't need to be the face of the brand. Let the business be the brand and run its own course. And I hear that conversationally quite a lot. What is your comment on that remark?
It's silly. I'll tell you why. Number one, if you talk to any venture capital or private equity firm in the world, right, who are they talking to decide whether or not they're going to do a deal with a business? The CEO. And based on the interactions they have with the CEO, plays one of the hugest roles in whether or not they're going to invest in the business. So yes, the technology has to be great, all those sort of things. That's assumed, right? But if you want to make a difference, think about it like, you know, we have NASCAR in the United States, right? So in NASCAR, every car is high performing. All of them have billions of dollars invested in them. They all have a pit crew, but what's the difference with every car? The driver. So you are the driver for your business. And if you decide not to leverage that, you are marketing with one hand behind your back unnecessarily. And we can talk about the big examples, the Bransons and the Musk and all this and that, but that's exaggerated. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about becoming a leader within your industry. So it's not about celebrity. It's not about ego. It's about effectiveness. And so if you want to get more deals, if you want to influence more people, then having a CEO or an executive brand is a practical way to move a needle and add to your marketing strategy.
Let's check. Who here is working on their personal brand? Show of hands. Okay. All right. Well, let's have a chat about that later then.
I'll just want to add one other quick thing to it. So, like a lot of us, we're in business to help people, right? And part of that is making sure that they're aware of it by all means necessary. And so I would say that you have a duty to your potential customer who otherwise is working with another firm that's out marketing you, right? And then they lose their money, it feels wasteful, and it's kind of your fault because you didn't do everything you could to help them be more aware of you and have a good experience.
And I read this research that said about 7 out of 10 purchases that are made that are of the slightly bigger size are already researched. So by the time people are engaging with your brands, they would have already made that decision. So they're Googling you, they're searching who you are and how you're showing up. And if you're not getting enough proof, then obviously they're not going to make that purchase. But I want to learn more from some of the case studies, clients, examples that have done this really successfully with you, or through you, actually. So who would that be? Can you give us some ideas and examples?
Yeah, so I'll give a couple global examples and a U.S. example. So one of the clients we worked with was GAC Motor. I actually saw their sign out here on the way over here. And GAC Motor is a multi-billion-dollar Chinese company. And so interestingly enough, they actually asked us to approach this from a pure corporate PR perspective at first because we were debuting their unmanned vehicle at the Detroit Auto Show a few years ago. And when we initially went out that pitch, we got a lot of pushback from media all around the world. And it was basically, Chinese companies don't innovate, they're more so duplicate things, right? And so what we had to do was then instead talk about one of our executives, Wu Song, his history of innovation and how he was bringing that to GAC Motors. And that made a huge difference. They had asked us to secure 5 media placements and get about 50 reporters to their press conference. We got them 75 media placements, all sorts of national, global media, auto industry, and we got 200 people to their press conference. So just that slight difference of leveraging an executive and humanizing the story made a big difference. Another person we worked with was former NBA player named Jonathan Bender. He was a number 5 draft pick. And he ended up blowing his knee out after about 5 years in the league, was considered a washout. He ended up creating a product that was so good, it rehabbed his knee and got him back into the NBA, right? So he played a season, and then he decided to retire. The Knicks had offered him another contract. He decided to pursue his entrepreneur ventures instead. When we started working with us, he was making just about $5,000 a month in product sales. What we did was create a narrative around here's this player that created this product that's this good, it got him back in the NBA, so he can probably help you with your back injury, right, that you got from running. And he was so proactive about his future, instead of continuing the NBA and being like 70% of NBA players who go broke within 5 years, he decided to pursue a business venture. So as a result, we got all sorts of global media, he got all sorts of interest from executives, increases distribution. Within 18 months, the business was doing $250,000 a month in revenue, and he sold it to a publicly traded company. And then lastly, there's you. And in working with Saana, like all the tools were there and the baseline was there. And the thing we did was just basically add the media strategy. And she writes regularly for Forbes when she wants to write an article. We have to get her to do some more. She got in Fortune, she got in HR.com, and that really kind of just had her media align with the quality of who she is. I mean, because like that's one of the big gaps that happens sometimes is that you have people, and many of you in this room, you're in the top percentiles of your industry in terms of performance, but it doesn't show up in a Google result. Like, where's the evidence of it, right? So getting third-party validation from the media helps people sift through things. If I'd gotten a chance to ask a question in the last panel, it would have basically been around, how do you filter through all the information that we're looking at today, right? And as executives, it's hard for us to make those decisions. Imagine how it is for consumers. So we got to do everything we can to make the decision easier for them.
Yes, thank you for that. And it's interesting because having worked on my personal brand, I haven't updated you, but you might want to know this. So on the back of all of the US exposure we got through Raul, all of a sudden we moved from a locally based player to having top athletes, celebrities. You might have heard one guy, his name is Tom Brady. You know, who's heard of him? Just a show of hands. Of course, greatest of all time. Somebody like him, Beyonce's father, Matthew Knowles, Hala Gorani, CNN correspondent, NBA players, Chelsea players. All of a sudden, with that global exposure that we got through you, people were now calling us at that level saying, we want to work with you. So it's so powerful when you do it right and with the right person. And I'm going to give a little boot to the local PR players, because we had worked with other CEO branding PR players regionally here. They just hadn't delivered. And so we needed to look internationally to get a bit more of a international play, which I think is, I heard a little rumor here, and I don't know if you can, this is breaking news, I don't know if it's true or not, but, are we getting an American agency relocating to the UAE and setting up an office here? Is that right?
We are, as verbally confirmed last night, and soon will be a formal announcement. We're
Please.
Partnering with LPS
Big round of
Media.
applause. Mabruk, welcome.
We're partnering with LPS Media here, who has worked with the Dubai Chamber, Microsoft, and many others, and we will have a location here. And what it means for us is that, there's so much great talent here. When I look at Dubai, when I look at this marketplace, I think the potential is incredible. It's a globally minded city, globally minded businesses. And look, one of the things I talk to them about is that even if your focus is on getting just regional exposure, there's nothing like getting some global media that makes you more credible, because then when we're going to local media, they don't feel like they're breaking you, right? And a lot of times media wants to make the safe decision in terms of who they're covering. And so when you get that Fortune and most Forbes and the Wall Street Journal and all that sort of stuff, it makes getting local and regional media easier.
Yeah, you're right. Obviously, and the clients tend to follow. In our case, they absolutely had. And all of a sudden, we went from MENA Speakers to, should we rebrand to Global Speakers, or what are we going to do? But why Dubai? I just want to hear why you've reason to kind of set up a base here as well. What's the rationale?
Yeah, so, we've done business on many different continents. And for me personally, one, I'm not going to lie, I just love the city. The people, the culture, the diversity of experiences. So on a personal level, that's one thing. Number two, out of all the places we've done business in the world, we have found this to be very similar in terms of the US, in terms of how proactive people are in terms of business. There's other parts of the world where, you'll hear things like, yeah, we're thinking about it. And that sort of delayed thinking, isn't always helpful. And then, in other parts of the world, there is sometimes too much of a shyness, right? And there's humility to a fault, which can be a thing, right? So we found that Dubai has a great balance, and we think has humongous opportunity and is a leading city in the world. So we're very excited.
Ooh, well, we're in for a treat. That's really exciting news. Mabruk, Raul. So, you know what? When I did ask who's working on their branding, we had about a handful of people really here. Let's assume somebody who wants to continue their personal branding journey, or maybe nudge their CEO if they're not, to join in. How would they go about? What is the process here?
Yeah, I mean, so the first thing you want to think about is to just quickly, how is someone going to understand you in 5 to 10 seconds? Because you have to, after the first 5 to 10 seconds, you have to earn to get to 30 seconds. After you get to 30 seconds, you got to earn to get to 60. And then once you got 60, you've got their attention, you're good, basically, right? So I'll give you an example. We have a client, her name's Dr. Jacqueline Del Rosario. She's a marriage counselor. You probably have already forgot her name by the time I've said it. So with a difficult name, we had to think about how do we make her memorable. So we positioned her as America's marriage coach, right? You can remember that, can't you? Yeah. So that sort of thing, that sort of framing tool makes a big difference, makes you more memorable. So you have to think about kind of like how people are going to understand your brand quickly. Then you have to look at these tools that we talked about, right? So like, what is your thought leadership perspective? And then you have to have that cut through across multi-medium. So your speaking topic, your thought leadership article, how you communicate on social, they should all have a through line, right? Because like that consistency makes it easier for people to not only remember you, but to refer you, right? Many of you have people who'd love to help you with your business, but they don't know what to say about it, right? So that sort of clarity, that ease is a starting point.
Fantastic. So I'm going to start prepping for if you have any questions, and if we have a mic runner here as well, that we surely open the floor for Q&A. I'm going to allow, all right, do we have any questions first of all? We have somebody exclusively here from the US. I'd really kind of, encourage you to take this moment to ask him any questions, tactical, personal, but that we also keep the questions short so we make the most out of Raul's time.
Hi.
Hi.
Short. My question is, so for your personal brands, like what's your favorite social media? Like where are you active the most?
Yeah, so for me, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and I'll tell you the why of each. So Instagram, I think, is important for a lot of CEOs, entrepreneurs, and executives to look at because it feels like more personal, right? It's like a way to explore who you are outside of just a pure business context. And then you can mix it. You can go back and forth, right? Saana does a wonderful job of this. And, like you can share photos of the kids, you can talk about business and give inspiration. So I think that is a wonderful platform. Twitter, I think, has gotten interesting again over the last 6 months since a certain person has taken over it. And even though there's a lot of pushback against that, I can tell you looking at the analytics from our clients and myself, the engagement and the reach is way up. So I think that that's a good tool. And then LinkedIn, that's where you're actually going to generate business, right? So LinkedIn, I think, is valuable because from the perspective that actually being able to create relationships, generate leads, I love LinkedIn. Now, what I'll tell you about LinkedIn is please don't be one of these people who is all salesy with their messaging, because how many of us get tired of that, right? Like how much do you just hit the delete button right away? A much better approach is that, let's say you had some sort of thought leadership article in a publication, or that there's just something interesting that you read. If you share that with somebody and you kind of word that messaging right and you're providing value to them, then people will appreciate that a bit more, right? Short message, and then those who respond, those are your opportunities to build relationships.
Absolutely. And just to kind of follow on that, so I use LinkedIn for business. I mean, I'm posting a lot all the time, and it's actually generating business. Instagram is my visual portfolio. Not the stories, though. That's very much me. But it's the visual portfolio. And then YouTube is additional social proof. And I know that because I sit in front of the clients as they're looking through personal brands all the time, and I hear them going, oh, that's not a big Instagram following. No, maybe not. Or, oh, that's an amazing Instagram profile. Validates what's going on the other platforms and the story that we're telling. So if those are not interlinked, as Raul was saying previously, you're losing out on a sale potentially because of that. But if they are, that's definitely going to help close a deal, or people feel more related to you, connected to you, back to the human-to-human concept. Oh, and I believe, do we have another question, or we will be around following for coffee break, so if you have any personal...
The last thing I'll just say quickly is for business-wise, TikTok, you should go ahead and start getting on it because it is where Instagram was several years ago, and it's only going to go upwards. So go ahead and start getting on that, or otherwise in a few years you'll be way behind the 8 ball, and we'll start lowering, reach like we've seen on Facebook and Instagram. TikTok is where you can get the best organic reach these days.
Good. Well, Raul, thank you so much for joining us. Please give him a big round of applause.
Thank you so much, Raul. Thanks, Anna, for joining in today. And any more questions? Do we have any one question form? Because I think it's a very interesting topic. And if we have any questions, we can take it now, and we can also take offline with them.
All right. Looks like there are no questions, and they're around. You can catch them in the coffee area and find them with any more questions. So thanks once again, Raul Davis and Saana Azzam, for Raul, especially you coming all the way from US, and Saana, of course, the MENA Speakers champion, the owner of MENA Speakers. So could you please join us for a photograph? And all right, can I please request Mitali to please join us on the stage for a quick certificate felicitation? That's for Saana Azzam. Thank you. Thanks, Raul. And thank you for a very interesting discussion we had on CEO and executive branding in the new marketing.